let's get to it here. All right. Well, today's live class is about, or is brought to you by Vorse. This is my company. We work with B2B SaaS and service companies. We help them build a repeatable sales process. So if you're hiring your first sales reps, or if you have a couple of sales reps, they're not performing as well as you'd like them to, feel free to reach out to us. We don't take very many customers on, so you're not going to get a bunch of sales pressure. But if you're interested in learning a little bit more about what we do, you can go to this link that I just put into the chat, and happy to chat with you. I'll be traveling next week, so we probably wouldn't be able to talk for 2 weeks. But there you go, in case that is something that's interesting to you. All right, how do we create the perfect sales pitch? And look, perfect, I'm being a little bit aggressive with my language here. I don't know if anything is perfect. It's always a work in progress. But I want to give you the tools you need to create a sales pitch that converts really well. That's ultimately my objective is. And how I'm going to do that is giving you a 4-step guide that gives sales calls a proven structure. If you don't know anything about my background, there's a lot of first timers here. Let me give you a quick run through, just 3 bullets about my background and why I'm qualified to speak on this. So I have worked with over 80 B2B software and service companies, really helping them build and refine their go-to-market strategy and their sales process. I view the sales function as this is a data-driven process that we're developing, and I want to be able to have a process so good that I can hire the average sales reps, they can follow the process, and then we can hit our target. And then we do whatever we can not to hire average salespeople, right? But the process is what I have found to be the difference between having a repeatable sales function that you can rely on. Whereas a founder, you can go to sleep at night and actually sleep and then wake up and know that you have a sales process that functions. And then put the best possible people we can on that team to execute on that process. I've written 3 Amazon best-selling books. One is on cold outreach called Cold to Committed. The other is on leading sales teams. That's called the Sales Development Framework. And then the third and most recent one is on building a repeatable sales process. That's called 16 Steps to Repeatable Sales. If you look up my name on Amazon, you'll see them all there. I've also helped our clients sell over 100 million in software and services, over 280 million in venture money raised across the venture-backed companies that I've worked with, which is like at this point, 20% of our customers have been venture-backed. And I've personally trained over 1,000 salespeople. So I've been around the block. I started as an SDR. I became an AE. I was in a selling role for a while. I've led teams. I've been in board meetings at a venture-backed company where things were going great. I've also been in board meetings where things weren't going great. I've been at just about every role you can be in the sales world. And I take all of that experience and I've really applied it across a lot of different domains, different verticals, and different types of products and offerings. All right. Well, what are you going to learn today? Good question. You're asking the right thing. The first is I'm going to walk you through some techniques to construct a sales call that the prospects actually want to be in. Most sales calls suck. Actually, I'd love to hear in the chat if you could type in, have you ever been on a demo or any type of sales call where you're like, gosh, this is just really not that engaging? And maybe you even kind of wanted their product. Just type yes if you ever had that kind of experience. The vast majority of us have it. It's so funny how that works because we may be interested in a product. We may be interested in somebody's service, but man, it's super frustrating when we get to that sales call and it just isn't good. So like Ryan says, he's had an experience like that. Same with Dave. This is common. And what I want for you guys is to have a way to where you're doing these sales calls and the prospects actually enjoy being on those sales calls. All things being equal, we buy from people we know, like, and trust. Such an important barrier, right? Do they trust us? And I want you to put a process in place that enables your reps to build and maintain that level of trust. Okay. And then Lauren brought up a good point here too that I wanted to highlight. Yes, the worst is being asked 10,000 times if I understand. Do you understand what I'm getting here? Oh, no, I actually have no idea. I'm a big idiot. That's what I would like to say back. Yeah. Does this make sense is the worst question ever. That's so true. And by the way, even I say that sometimes. It's just a habit, right? Like these are the things that you need to kick. And that's why these scripts are so helpful. And you'll see less of a sales script, more of a sales guide, framework to follow. All right, cool. Second thing here is I'm going to be giving you a simple framework for structuring discovery calls so your reps learn more about the prospect. I'll give you methods to tailor every sales call to the prospect while following best practices. And then finally, a strategy for increasing how often your reps get the sale or the next step. Some of you actually type in the chat, do you do one call closes or does it take multiple calls? And you can either write multiple calls or you can write the number of calls that it takes. I'm curious just to get a sense here. Are we dealing with folks who have a lot of one call closes, or are you meeting with prospects more than once? Okay, multiple calls for Jeremy here. That's probably going to be the most common. Multiple here for Ryan. Dave said both. So sometimes they close on one call. Sometimes they take multiple calls. 2 to 3 month sales cycles for Jeremy. Okay, cool. Good to hear. So the next step is going to be the most important part of this. We're not trying to sell on every single call. Early on, we just want to get that next step. And I'm going to show you exactly how I try to structure these calls to increase the likelihood of us getting to that next step or getting the deal if that's your goal. All right, real quick, why is this information important today? A couple of things. One is most sales advice we have learned has been dead wrong. And I've had this proven to me time and time again. More activity is not leading to more sales. How many people email you saying that they're going to book you 20 to 30 appointments per month by using cold email, and they're going to send 1,000 emails a day? It's not just a volume game. Okay, does volume help? Sure. But it's not solely a volume game. There's no real debate here. When you say, is it quality or is it quantity of outreach? I want both, right? But we got to be honest and say, just doing more activity, just making more cold calls or just sending more emails is not leading to more sales. And how do I know this? Because 58% of sales organizations miss quota. It's a study that was done by Gartner a couple of years ago. I've seen studies that show even worse than this now. The vast majority of sales organizations are not hitting quota. And by the way, if you were to dissect those sales organizations, it's a small percentage of sales reps that generate the vast majority of the revenue. Okay, it's not working, this blind activity stuff. Also, more technology is not leading to more sales either. How many sales tools do you see where they promise you these crazy results, or we're going to make your team more efficient, they're going to generate more business, blah, 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 blah. And then you use it and it doesn't really do that. The reality is sales technology is such an attractive thing to sell because it's so tightly tied to revenue. You could show ROI very easily. You're not trying to convince somebody that you're going to streamline operations and reduce the amount of spend they have on the labor, right? It's literally, you're going to get more deals. Hey, if we increase this conversion rate by 2%, look, that's an extra 50 grand a month. It's so much easier. So we see this ballooning of sales tech, yet we're not seeing quota attainment go up. And with AI, you're seeing the exact same thing, right? How many AI tools are there right now that'll personalize the first sentence of an email and blast it out? A ton. How many people do you know that are having a ton of success with that? Probably none. I know very few, very few. So I want to be clear about why this is so important now, because the fundamentals drive the results. And I want to be really clear about that. You're going to hear this kind of stuff from me all the time. I don't care all that much about this flashy new technique. We can rotate through flashy stuff. Oh, let's try video prospecting. Let's not do video prospecting. Let's do this. Let's do that. We can do all that. We can test things. That's totally fine. But the fundamentals need to be there. And that's what we're going to be talking about today is fundamentals. So before I jump into the 4 steps, creating a sales pitch is very challenging. It is challenging. It takes time. It takes iteration. I'm going to give you the tools you need to develop it. But what I'm going to ask you to do is spend the time iterating on your scripts, on your sales process. So that way you get it to a place where you can truly rely on it. Okay. There is no magic bullet. I wish there was. I'd be very rich, but there's not, right? You got to iterate. You got to test. All right, cool. 4 steps to creating a high converting sales demo. Let me cough real quick. Excuse me. Hope I didn't blow out your eardrums. All right. The first is what's called the upfront contract. If anyone's familiar with Sandler's sales training methodology, you will have heard of that before. The next is a discovery framework. So how you actually structure your discovery call. The third is demo segments. So this is demoing a product. This also works if you're walking through a service. And then finally, the close. So that's what we're going to go through here today. Now, you might do this all on one call. I'm sure a lot of you do these on separate calls. It still applies, okay? But this is the framework that we follow. All right, the first one is the upfront contract. Every single sales call, discovery call, demo call, we're doing a technical review. I don't care what the sales call is, it must start with an upfront contract because it simply works. The purpose of the upfront contract is to demystify the sales process. Okay. I want no surprises for the prospect. None. I'm going to tell you what we're going to do on this call, and I'm going to tell you what decision I'm going to ask you to make at the end of it, right at the beginning. So when I go and ask you to make that decision, you knew it was coming, right? Demystifies it. The main thing here is surprises cause discomfort, and I do not want to surprise the prospect. Oh, that's a new piece of information. Now I need to think through this. I need to decide. No. I want to make sure there's no surprises unless it's very positive. And then it lets you understand their expectations. I want to know the person who's taking the time to listen to me talk about what we do and how we can help them. I want to know what their expectations from this call is. If you've ever had the experience where somebody shows up to a meeting, they're like, hey, I thought we were going to do a demo, and you're really just doing a discovery call, you know what I'm talking about. Knowing those expectations early is really important. And then finally, I want to get confirmation on the decision that's being made at the end of this call, which I already mentioned briefly. So what does it look like? Here is the upfront contract. This is an example. I'm going to read through. I'm going to break down for you why this works and how it's structured. So I'm going to read through it first. I really appreciate your time. The purpose of this call is to walk you through how we can help you, whatever you help them with. That's the value prop. Before I jump into my agenda, I'd like to hear from you. What are your expectations from the call? This is critical for understanding their expectations. We're on a discovery call and they're expecting a demo. I can address it here right in the beginning. So there's no surprises. They're not sitting there thinking, oh, I thought I was going to see a demo today, right? Very, very important to get their expectations. Next part of this. Thanks for sharing that. I promise that I'll meet those expectations. In addition, I'm going to be asking you some questions so we can learn more about how they're doing things, right? Whatever their use case is. Is that fair? Yeah, totally fair. I'm letting them know that we're going to be asking them questions so they don't feel like they're being drilled out of nowhere. They don't understand where the questions are going. I'm giving them the reason. I'm going to ask you some more questions around this situation so I better understand where you're at. Next section here. Here's my agenda for the call. List out the agenda. And finally, whatever the next step is. Ask for the sale, set up an onboarding call, find a time to walk you through the product or the offering. Anything you'd like to cover that I may have missed. Super simple. We have an hour scheduled. Do you have a hard stop? Finally, at the end of this call, we will decide next step. Does that sound fair? You're getting a commitment that they'll make a decision at the end of this call. Now, by the way, this is a guideline for you. Change the script up. For example, if you know there are going to be other decision makers involved, other champions that might be involved in, or stakeholders that might be involved in the deal, great. Point that out. Finally, typically when I talk to people in your role looking for a solution like ours, they tell me that there's going to be probably about 3 other people who are going to want to take a look at that. Curious, is that the same for you? Oh, yes, it is. All right, perfect. Well, at the end of this call, we'll decide together if it makes sense to pull those folks in, and then we can do one more in-depth demo across all 4 of you. Is that fair next step? Yes. You see what I'm doing. I'm getting them to commit to bringing in the people that we're going to need to talk to. So that's the upfront contract. I want this to happen on every sales call possible. And does it sound a bit formal? Yes, it can come across a bit formal, but I would say it comes across more professional than anything else. And if you've ever been on a sales call with a professional versus not a professional, you know the difference. And even if this feels a little scripted, as you say it more naturally, it comes across fine. I promise you that. But even if this feels a little bit more scripted, it's better than having a loosey-goose intro and nobody has any real expectations for what's going to happen in the call that they're on. Cool. So that's step 1 here. It's the upfront contract. We're going to move into the discovery framework. There's a common phrase you may have heard. Deals are won and lost in the discovery. And I believe this. I think information is one of the biggest, if not the biggest barrier in selling. In fact, the only other thing that could be more important is the trust itself, because trust unlocks the information. So the better we do discovery, the more we understand about their business and their current situation, the better we can position our product or service as a true solution to the challenges that they experience. And that's why I take so much care in the discovery. Now, what discovery questions should you ask? This is going to be different for everybody. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you a framework that I like to follow, and then give you some questions that you could ask or variations of questions. Before I do that, I just want to be clear about something. I believe for most things, a framework is greater than a script. We can script things out word for word. And sometimes your sales process is so optimized that you get away with that. But I generally like giving reps the autonomy to navigate the conversation as they see fit, and frameworks do a good job at that. Sales calls are really dynamic. It's hard to script every possible thing that could come up. So having more of a framework versus a script allows the reps to stay flexible. And what's also nice is reps can check off as they go if they understand and they've done a good job in each one of the sections of the discovery call. So what does it look like? Here's how I break down a discovery. There's 5 key areas. Current state, how are you guys doing things today? The problem, better understanding the problem that they're experiencing. Third is the impact. Spoiler alert, this is the one sales reps tend to ignore because they feel uncomfortable asking these questions, but we'll get to that in a minute. The fourth is ideal state. Where do you want to be? And then finally, priority. How big of a priority is it? Cool. 5 steps. Let's go through them one by one. So current state is about understanding how are you currently doing things. We're asking questions like, what's motivating the conversation today? And after the upfront contract, that's my favorite question to ask. So what's motivating you to take the time to talk to me today? Then another question you can ask is, what is your current process for X? Something that you help with, right? How are you doing that today? And I like lead-ins sometimes for folks. Tell me a bit about, can you please describe, could you walk me through getting them to open up and tell you, hey, here's where I am today. And as they're describing that and they're telling you where they are today and you're asking these questions, problems start coming out. In fact, often when you say what's motivating the conversation today, they're going to reply with a problem. So you ask questions to better understand how things are going today. How are they doing things today? Then you understand, here's the main problem. And then we move into the problem section. How do you feel about that? How long has that been happening? How have you tried to solve it? Why do you think that problem exists? What do you think is causing that problem? Help me understand, and then getting more details around the problem. This is giving you more insight into the problem, how the problem kind of fits into their world, why it's frustrating. What else does it cause to happen? Where if this one thing was solved, those things would also go away. I want to understand the problem as the hub and all this, the messy stuff that are the spokes that stem from that problem being present, right? The more painful the challenge, the more success we're going to have. And that's really key. I want painful challenges. Now, at a certain point, we're going to want to understand the impact. And this is where so many sales reps drop the ball. They don't ask impact questions, but impact questions are what make things worth solving, makes it real for them. So impact questions are curious, how is this impacting you specifically? What impact is that having? Help me understand how that impacts you. What does solving that problem do for you? These are great questions to find impact, but sometimes, and the reason why sales reps usually skip this part, the impact's pretty obvious. Oh, okay, by not having that, you're going to be able to close more deals. Yeah, duh, the impact is this problem is resulting in me not closing as many deals as I would like. And that's so obvious that it can be uncomfortable to then say to them, like, well, tell me the impact of that. And it almost like you are trying to do all this work to have trust and build rapport with this person. And then you turn into like this sharky salesperson for a second. And they're like, okay. And they kind of answer the question or they laugh and they're like, what are you talking about? This is a stupid question. And then like you go back into like your normal mode. We don't want to be that sharky mode, right? We want to be like a normal person. So how I recommend asking impact questions to prevent coming across as like trying to use a sales tactic on them is I generally will lead in with the obvious. So let's go back to our example. Let's say the impact of solving this problem means you close more deals. So I might say like, okay, cool. So I understand how you guys are currently doing this today. This is the problem. This is the scope of the problem. Typically when I talk to CEOs, they tell me that the main impact they expect from solving this problem is that they're going to close more deals. But I'm curious to hear from you. How do you view this impacting you? So I'm telling them, yeah, I know the obvious. I'm not I'm not a big idiot here. I get that there's an obvious answer, but I just want to hear it in your words a bit. And that's usually a good way to soften that kind of question. Next, we have ideal state. So, we understand the current state. We got the problem. We understand the impact of the problem. Where do you want to be? I know where you are. Where do you want to be? What would the ideal situation look like if we fix this problem today? What would success look like a year from now? How would you like things to work? How do you envision a system like this helping? What are you hoping to gain by using a system like ours? Get a picture of what ideal looks like. And if you can quantify their current state and their ideal state, you're in really good shape. Oh, you want to close more deals? Well, how many deals are you closing per month now? 20. Well, what's the ideal state for you? Where would you like to see that with your current team without hiring more people? Well, I think we can be doing 28. Okay, so you're at 20. You believe you should be going, you should be at 28. Depending on your average deal size, let's say that's an extra 50K in sales per month. Now I've quantified this gap. This gap is the reason we closed the deal, because this gap is worth solving. Because I'm so sick of being in my current state, I'll do anything to get to the ideal state within reason. Cool. Now, that's the ideal state. We move into priority. This is the simplest one. You can't even mess this one up. Where is this on your priority list? How high of a priority is this? Why is this a priority now? That's a great question. I want to make sure that this is a problem worth solving, because if it's not that high on their priority list, this deal will stall out. And I forget who said, somebody said they had a 2 to 3. Yeah, Jeremy, you said 2 to 3 month sales cycle. I'm sure you have a couple of deals that go 6 to 8 months. And that's typically because the problem you solve isn't worth solving now for them. Or we didn't do a good enough job helping put ourselves higher on their priority list, right? Why now? Great question. So Jeremy brought this up. Why now? Really, really, really good question. Cool. That's the discovery framework. Now build this out for you, refine those questions, right? These questions should all be tailored, with the exception of maybe some of the impact questions, priority questions. All of these should basically be tailored to what you're solving. And over time, you'll see certain questions lead to really good answers that give you a sense of that current state, ideal state, and so you can better quantify that gap. Now, that's discovery. We're going to move on to doing a demo. I'm going to treat this as if everyone here does a software, sells a software product, but we follow the same framework for our clients that sell services. So you can follow the same framework. What I want to stress here is some of you do all these on one call. Other of you are going to split this up. You're going to do a discovery call. You're going to do a demo call. What I want to share is that upfront contract that we're doing in the very beginning. That upfront contract happens on every call. So upfront contract, discovery, end of discovery call. Upfront contract, demo, end of demo call, right? Upfront contracts stay in every single call. All right, let's talk about demo segments here. What I recommend you do is split your demo into segments. This might be a feature or a group of features that achieve a desired result for the prospect, that help them solve a problem. And the reason why I split this into segments is because I want to make sure that I am touching upon segments that actually matter. If part of your product doesn't matter to them because they don't have that problem, why would we show it to them? Doesn't make sense. We don't need to, right? I want to make sure the segments matter. And it also allows us to control each segment of the call, and then we can measure how effective that segment is. Okay. The next thing is I like trial closes. So type in yes if you've ever heard a sales rep say something like, is this aligned with what you're looking for? Any questions for me so far? Or even worse, does this make sense? Type in yes if you've ever had some of those just really basic yes or no questions asked to you. These are the most common that I hear from salespeople. And when I listen to demos, I just hear all of these questions like yes or no. Does that make sense? Is this helpful? Do you think this is something that's good? So I'm seeing some yeses here. Good. Super common. We don't want that. We want good trial closes. And Jeremy admits he does this, by the way. Good trial closes are more open-ended. How do you see this impacting your team? How? What do you expect, if your team uses, what would you expect the outcome to be? More open-ended question. We'll talk more about those in a minute. And then also, like I was saying earlier, these segments can be rearranged based on the product or the prospect. So you can cut out parts, you can add parts. You might have, if it's super complicated product, you might have 15 segments, and then you're just organizing which segments you're going to cover for that particular prospect. So what does it look like? Well, very, very simple. And this is totally customized for you, but decide on what segments you are going to have. So let's say you sell a marketing automation tool. You might have a segment that's dashboards. You might have a segment on scheduling emails. You might have a segment on workflow automations. So go through and think through, what are all of the components of my offering? If it's a service, what are the components of our service? If it's a software, what are the features or groups of features that have a positive outcome for the prospect when they use it? And you build those into segment and you write a trial close based on that segment. So let's go to our marketing automation tool. Let's say I'm walking through the dashboards. Okay. There's a bunch of features there, a bunch of different dashboards. And I go through it. And then I would pause at the end, once I've gone through and shown them parts of it, I'd say, curious, what would you do with the information on this dashboard if you had it? How do you think your team would feel with this level of insight? These are the types of questions that you can ask. And then guess what? Tell me more about that. Oh, could you explain that a little differently for me? You can ask them questions and follow up and get them explaining what the world would look like if they had the feature or set of feature that you just walked them through. That's a good trial close. So let's talk about workflow automations. Maybe we're going to create these crazy automated inbound workflows. And we're going to walk them through how simple it is to build these and how amazing it is. And look, AI does the whole thing for you or whatever it is. And at the end, you can ask, how would this impact your team in the way they're doing things today? How do you envision this working with your organization? Get them to articulate to you what the world looks like after they've been using your solution. And that's how you structure your demo segments. Like I said, I generally will build as many of these as we can, and then we'll organize them for the prospect. If you sell a product like a marketing automation tool is a great example of this, where it's like really defined, you might have 3 to 5 of these, and you're going to go through the majority of them. And each time, maybe you'll cut 1 or 2 out because they're just not relevant for a specific prospect, but you're generally doing the same demo every time. That's totally okay. You don't have to rearrange these. You don't have to have a ton of these. You can just be really structured. We do the same thing every time. But I want you to think through feature, like kind of the outcome that they get from this feature or set of features, or the component of my offering, if it's a service, right? Or this group of components. And then what's the trial close we're going to be asking? And as you do each one of these segments, you try different trial closes and see which one gets people to open up the most. That's ultimately what I want. I don't want them sitting there during a demo not talking. I want them giving me feedback on how they feel this is going to impact them. Instead of, do you see this helping you get closer to your ideal state? You can say, how do you think this would help get you closer to your ideal state? You wouldn't end the question with ideal state, by the way, but you get my point here. That's what I'm trying to get across. All right, let's talk about the close here, because this is where people get real squirrely. Not every salesperson handles the close very well. Obviously, there's pretty psychological too. Like if you grew up in a family where it's like, hey, we can't afford that, and like there's some weird stuff about money, it might be difficult for you to ask for money, right? So like everyone gets all weird about the close. Now we're either closing on money or we're closing on a next step. In both scenarios, I still call it a close. The first thing I'm going to point out is the close is not nearly as big of a deal as it might seem like. If you go through and they clearly articulate, because you ask good trial closes, they clearly articulate exactly how this is going to impact them. The natural next step is, all right, well, let's get you onboarded, right? So here's how I recommend asking for the sale. First, we summarize the value. You explain their options, and you ask which option makes the most sense for them. So here's an example close. So based on what we talked about earlier, you're here, you're trying to get here. Seems like you see this impacting your team in these specific ways. From here, there are 2 options. Option 1, we have plan A. Option 2, we have plan B. Which do you think makes the most sense for you? If you only have one plan, you may just say the next step from here is discussing when you would like to onboard. So I'd love to get some feedback from you and see when you feel like it makes the most sense for you to, roll out a solution like ours, our solution. You are very assumptive. You've summarized the value. You've taken them through this journey. They've confirmed with you along the way that this is what they're looking for through the trial closes. And now you're offering the next step. If the next step is meeting with 3 other people and doing a demo for them, you say, okay, great. Seems like this is going to help you get from where you are to where you want to go. You mentioned in the beginning of the call that the most obvious next step for us is to get Sarah, Jason, and Caroline on the call so I can give them a demo as well and get some of their feedback. Can you open up their calendars, and why don't we find a time that works for all of us right now? This is how we're closing, making it a no-brainer for them, being a bit assumptive, but not in a weird way, in an authentic way. And then we can listen through how, if any problems come up. But because the trial closes are so impactful during the demo or during the walkthrough of the offering, what happens is the objections that they might have come up then. They don't come up all the way at the end. So that's how I recommend doing the close. Like really put a lot less pressure on you and your salespeople around asking for money, and you'll see it be, it's going to work a lot better for you. All right, the last thing I'm going to leave you with is really like what's responsible for how effective we have been in selling products and services. This alone was the big unlock for me. I was 24 years old when I was hired to run a sales development team in a software company in San Francisco. I was 24. People on my team were older than me. And I was just a people leader. I was rah, like get people excited. We're closing deals. That was how I was. And our team did well until they didn't. And when I figured this next thing out, I was able to turn things around in a really big way. That's the short version of the story. Maybe one day I'll tell the long version, but I don't want this. I want to do Q&A here in a few minutes. You have to iterate with data. This is so critical. And this is where a lot of folks drop the ball. You need to measure where's the drop off, what parts of our demo are not being, are not resonating with our prospect. Where in our sales process, you have a 3-month sales process. Where's the drop off across the 3 months? You need to better understand these things, because with that, you can make tweaks to your sales process to make things smoother, to reduce friction, to make things better, to convert more. The data piece is so critical. And this is the part that I preach a lot. For those of you like a lot who come to these classes regularly, I talk about this a lot. Sometimes we do classes that are just data focused. It's so critical that you iterate with data and let data drive your decision-making. If someone's win rate is low, you don't change the whole script. You listen segment by segment and go, which trial close needs to change? What's going on in this discovery call? Are we not doing a good job with the current state or the ideal state? Are we not quantifying when we can quantify? These are the types of questions that you will ask yourself. All right, let's transition to Q&A. So if you have a question, type it in. It can be about the topic today. It can be about something outside of this topic that's somewhat go-to-market related. That would be nice. But if you want to talk parenting, we can, I guess. I have 3 kids. I don't know if I'm the best authority, but I do the best I can. Vorse.com/events if you want to see our other events. And let's go to Q&A. I'm back. Look at me. Full screen. You're lucky. All right. Let's go to the chat here. Oh, before anybody leaves, don't leave. Stop. If you were about to hit that X button, do not do it. Not good. Don't push that X button. Instead, what I want you to click is the repeaters know exactly what's happening. Yeah, that's right, Ryan. The survey link. I take these classes really seriously, as you can tell. I try to give as good of content as I possibly can. They're completely free. As you could tell, it wasn't a pitch fest. I didn't just try to get you to buy my thing. I really value the input from the community. And these classes are popular. We get a lot of people who register for these. We get a lot of people who come here live. And I work to make them better and better and better as time goes on. And the only way I'm able to do that is by survey. This survey takes you a minute. It gives me a sense of what you thought about the topic today, what other topics you might find valuable. So that way I can keep putting on live events every single week that are really valuable to you. Cool. So that's a small gift from you to me would be filling out this survey. I'm on a quest to get 100% survey completion. I've yet to achieve that quest. I got 80% once. I was pretty impressed. I think today we could do it. So if you're thinking about not clicking on the link, think again. You can make this little boy's dream come true. Finally. All right. Do we have any questions? I've stalled long enough. I don't see any questions, which is surprising to me. Usually we have a bunch of questions. So I'm going to give you guys another minute here. I'll ramble while we're doing that. And if I don't have a question by the end of this ramble, then I will get out of here. I don't see any questions. All right. Well, here's kind of my last little plea to you. Fill out my survey. But really, I encourage you when it comes to like really developing your sales process, you should treat it like you're developing a sales process. Use the data, make tweaks to your process, and really like measure the impacts of stuff that you change. Don't just wildly change scripts and stuff for no reason. All right, look, now we got questions. You see that? I'm a pro. I know what I'm doing. All right. Off-topic question, which I'm happy to accept considering there were none prior. What is your office video call setup? Camera use, lighting, etc. It's absurd. You do not want to do it. I can tell you what it is, but I'm also telling you it's absurd. I'm a little bit of a nerd, like a video nerd. I did video production stuff in high school. I like would do film competitions and stuff. I was also in theater. I'm really into this stuff. I have an FX3 camera, Sony FX3. The lights are aperture lights, but that doesn't, you don't have to do the aperture lights. That's just the ones I got. They're a little bit pricey, but they're nice. Really, like I would say, I don't really care about the camera that you get nearly as much as I care about the lighting. What makes this look good is the lighting. I have these little lights here that like give some, depth between the background and like gives it some dimension. And then that light over there is responsible for this little rim here. And then that light is kind of lighting me. So there you go. FX3 is the camera and the lights are aperture lights, and you can get the cheaper, Amaran is the brand, the sub brand of aperture. Amaran lights, they're cheaper. Those are the ones I would get. If you're not going to get the FX3, which you shouldn't, the FX3, the FX30 is good, or you can get like the A6400 or 6700 or whatever. All right, enough about cameras. I have one. When we think we can go for the close, do you have something smooth to make it seamless? Yeah, you recap. This goes in the discovery call if you're not closing to get a sale. This goes in the demo. This goes on a cold call. All right, so this is what I've gotten from you so far. Recap, show I listen. You said this and that and this, and then it would impact you in this way. All of that sounds great. Like you just do a recap and then you transition to the actual close. Why don't we do this? Let me walk through the two options you have moving forward, from here, and then you tell me which one makes the most sense. Cool? Yes? Okay, great. Now go through the two options. A recap is a really smooth way, and then why don't we do this is my favorite phrase to help transition from a recap. Can you give an example of clear metrics on iterate with data? Yes. I'll go from cold call all the way to closing a deal. And cold call can be email too, it doesn't matter. But how many calls are being made? How many people are answering the phone? Dial to connect rate. How many people answer the phone? How many meetings did we book? Connect to meeting rate. How many meetings booked? How many meetings showed up? Show rate. How many meetings that show up made it to deal stage 2? Let's say they showed up on the first deal stage 2. That's a drop off. That's stage by stage drop off now that we're talking about. What percentage of deals go from deal stage 2 to deal stage 3? That's drop off. Deal stage 3 to deal stage 4. However many deal stages you have, you're looking at the drop off between stages, and then ultimately from the final deal stage to close. And then you're going to look at my overall win rate from deal stage 1 to close, and it gives you a sense of your numbers. And then you know which call you're probably losing somebody in because they'll be tied to specific deal stages, and then you can work on that area. Or if it's way top of the funnel on the cold calls, you'll know like, hey, our dial to connect rate got cut in half. No wonder our performance is suffering. How do we fix our dial to connect rate? So that's the short version of it. We do a live class often around all of the metrics. I go into even more detail, but hopefully that was helpful. How would you overcome the objection of, let me get back with my team and get back to you with next steps. If you use the upfront contract, you will get this very infrequently because you're going to get them to commit to whatever the next step that makes sense is. So in the very beginning, you're telling them like, hey, at the end of this call, I'm going to look to you to see like what I feel, what you feel the best next step is. Typically it's this, assuming you like everything, would you be able to help facilitate meeting with the other people or whatnot? Get an idea of what next step would make sense in their world at the beginning of the call, and then set an expectation that at the end of the call, you're going to ask them to facilitate that thing. That's how I would handle that. Good question. Can you go deeper into the close? I mean, it really depends on what way. Like, there's no real tricks here, and that's like something I want to be really clear about. There's no tricks. We recap, then we offer the next step, and that next step might be buying, but we don't have to use tricky language. And by the way, I'm talking B2B sales. I used to sell gym memberships. It was my first sales job, was selling gym memberships. Fun fact: I dropped out of college to do stand-up comedy, and I worked at a gym during the day, and I did stand-up at night. It's one of my favorite jobs. Just because I don't know if you've ever worked at a gym before, like everyone who works at a gym is a character. It's hilarious. They're a bunch of goofballs. And we would use all sorts of weird little tactics. Like, oh, I need to go talk to my wife or whatever. Like, we have all these little canned lines that we would use. Those are more like objection overcoming things. And if you get common objections, again, I want those objections happen in the middle of the call during the trial closes, not right at the end. But what I'm encouraging you to do with the close here, so as opposed to what I was just talking about with the gym sales thing, where it's like real aggressive, you want the sales call to be so natural that the next step is the next step. You already told them that was what the next step was going to be at the beginning of the sales call. And then you went through everything and no objections came up, or they did, and you were able to overcome them. And then you get right to the end and you say, well, from here, I recap everything that we just talked about. Seems like we check all of your boxes. The next step would be scheduling your kickoff call. So I'd love to get some feedback from you. When do you feel like it would make the most sense for you to roll out our solution? And that's what I would ask. Again, in the very beginning, you're doing that upfront contract. So then that way you have permission and no surprises at the end. Cool. Which app are we using for this demo environment? It's great. Oh, this one. We use StreamYard for this thing. It's pretty cool. Yeah, I like it a lot. I tried a bunch of them. This is my favorite. Okay. I like that we can see the chat, comment, question. Oh, the same thing. Yeah. It's really cool. Like, you can ask the questions. I can also pull people up. So like, if somebody wanted to, you could just say, hey, I'll do it. And then we could talk, or I could even put you on camera. It's like pretty sweet. Okay. Oh yeah. What conference app? There you go. StreamYard, everybody. How do I stop seeming robotic? By saying it a bunch. Are you robotic when you talk to your friends? No, because you're like comfortable, right? So you just need to talk to the buyer a lot. So here's something I do with sales reps, or not something I do, but something I expect from a sales rep. I want a sales rep to be able to go to a meetup group that's just with their buyers. And then they're there having conversations with their buyers, and nobody knows that they're a sales rep. They just think that you're like us. So if you haven't spent a lot of time with your buyers, that's what I'd recommend you do. And then you'll sound less robotic. All right, next question here. I know this is probably able to be done in the upfront contract, but how would you ask for getting the EB on the next call? Let's say and I'm assuming that means economic buyer, executive buyer, EB, tell me which one it means. Let's say we have done a disco call, demo call, or multiple, and then they want to run a trial, but our leadership wants the EB to be involved to unlock a trial. How do I ask for that? You tell them this in the beginning. So like, hey, we've done a handful of calls here. Let me just share with you. Oh, by the way, if you're doing this many calls, you might even want to tell them about this early on. So once they've confirmed that they would like to continue the process with you, and you schedule that next step, you'd say, okay, great. So what was your order here? Let's say we've done a disco call, demo call, or multiple. Okay. So let's say at the end of the disco call, they're like, yeah, I really want to take a look at this. Or maybe it's at the demo call. You can tell them at the very end, you schedule the next step, and you can say, hey, this is what it looks like from here. We just scheduled the demo. We're going to do the demo. If we meet all your expectations here, I would imagine you're going to want to do a trial. Is that right? Yes. Okay, great. We're totally comfortable doing that. One of the things we like to see on our side is that we have so-and-so involved. I'd prefer you to use their name and not call them the economic buyer, by the way. So-and-so involved. Are you comfortable getting them involved during the trial setup just to make sure that we're all aligned on the expectations of the trial and then what would have to be true in order for you to continue from trial to a full deployment? Is that fair? Yeah, that's fair. That's how I would handle that a bit earlier than even this one individual call. Now, on that call, like let's say it's too late, right? And you've already done all the other stuff and you have a sales call right after this, then what I would do is I'd use it in the upfront contract. So you're right. I'd say, okay, great. We're going to walk through like what a trial would look like, some of your expectations from a trial. Before we deploy the trial, we'd like to get everyone who is involved in the decision-making process of full deployment. So in that way, we also know their expectations from the trial, and we can make sure that you're fully enabled to make the most out of the whatever, 14 days, 30 days, whatever it might be. Okay, great. So yeah, economic buyer. What was the product name for StreamYard? Yard. Like I'm gonna go play in the yard. StreamYard. Oh, someone help. Thanks, Ryan. All right. Practice. Yeah, this is well, this is good old Jordan Belford here. Practice. Learn the material and own it. Only way I could do sales is personality and application like a river flow. Be cool like a fan. Love it. Thanks, Jordan. Absolutely baller way to bring up on the EB question. Yeah. That's how I'd recommend doing it. I also, if you have longer sales cycles, I do recommend giving them a sense of what your buying process is and then reminding them throughout the selling process. Do you have your line of questioning for disco/demo available? Yeah, let me grab this for you guys. I have a demo guide. I'll throw a link to it in the chat. Oh, great. 1 second. I have to verify that this is actually me. No, I'm on a different browser. Sorry. Give me a second, guys. I'm going to grab this for you. But you're going to be bored because I'm going to be clicking around trying to figure out where the heck my... All right. X out of that. Okay, cool. All right. Sorry to bore you, but I'm grabbing it. Discovery. Good call guide. All right. Make a copy of this. Here's the link. Copy link, go back here. Look at me, Mr. Tech Guy. All right, cool. There's a link to that. Oh, speaking of links, you guys thought you were going to get away with just 1 promo. 2, please fill out this survey, especially if you're still here. This is the least you can do. Come on. I'm giving you spreadsheets now. Yeah, so anyway, the first link is a link to some of the questions and edit that. Make a copy of that document. You can edit it there. And then, so that's this link here. I'll just pop it up for a second. And then here's a survey. Please do the survey. It helps me a ton. It really gives me good insights. I don't do it for any goofy stuff. You're not going to get hounded by an SDR or anything. I do strictly do this so I can get better feedback on the live classes. All right. Well, you've asked me every question in the book. You asked me about how to set up your own camera. You asked me what tool I'm using to do these live classes. We've gone under the hood and we've gone over the hood. You have the discovery call guide. You have a 4-step process to having excellent sales calls. I've given you baller answers. Jordan Belford has been in here. Like, we have done so much here and I really appreciate it. There's a lot you can be doing on a Thursday. You chose to spend it with me. I'm very grateful for that. Thank you. We'll talk soon. Bye, everybody.